Your money forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you. Now, I need your help. If you have the phone number here, 882-4217 and the 434 in the house. I need you to let me know. You can also do it through the email jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com if the Rumble feed is working or not. See, here's the weird thing about Rumble is that they won't let you get a link to your feed until you start your feed. So unless you want to watch 2 or 3 minutes of me doing this for a while, because I'm really incapable of talking and walking at the same time sometimes. Certainly talking and typing is difficult. So please, somebody go to Rumble. It's JTITM show, and look up the live stream there, because everything I'm looking at says we're feeding Rumble. But of course YouTube as well, and I'm sure they'll both get PO'd at me for trying to have my cake and broadcast it too. Here, coming to you from the greatest city in the history of mankind, where this past weekend we celebrated the birthday of Thomas Jefferson, who, among all things, is not anything anyone has ever said about him, especially where they claimed his racism. And I shared, probably not for you, but the Declaration of Independence, certainly the most notable thing. Thomas Jefferson's own tombstone doesn't even mention being Secretary of State or President of the United States. Wonder if John Kerry's tombstone won't mention him being Secretary of State. What will Hillary Clinton's tombstone say? Will she mention being Secretary of State on that? I think so. But Jefferson didn't think those things were as nearly as accomplished as, the Virginia Act for Religious Freedom, to make sure that the churches didn't get addicted to the free money from the government. They found new ways to, of course, but to protect the original intent of the church and the state, and Jefferson trying to put a firewall after all experience hath shown, stealing his phrases intentionally, that states generally will use churches to buttress what can be only determined to be fleeting moments of authority. And sometimes churches, vice versa, can use the engaged armies of king to enforce their ways. And in Jefferson's original draft of the Declaration of Independence, he talked about one thing that I think most people don't realize, and this isn't some conspiracy theory driven by QAnon. Did you see the story that was burning up the internet? Some guy standing behind President Trump at a speech held up his cell phone with the letter Q on it, because that helps. But within the Declaration of Independence in its original draft is this passage. He has waged cruel. I'm going to read it to you. I can quote some of it, but I'd rather read it to you because I just think it's important. And this was a legal filing against the King of England for violating his job under Magna Carta. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. This piratical warfare, the opprobrium of infidel powers, is the warfare of the Christian king of Great Britain, determined to keep open a market where men should be bought and sold. He has prostituted his negative for suppressing every legislative attempt, that's important, we may come back to that in a moment, to prohibit or restrain this execrable commerce, and that his assemblage of horrors might no fact of distinguished die. He is now exciting these very people to rise in arms among us and to purchase that liberty of which he has deprived them, and murdering the people upon whom he has also obtruded them, thus paying off former crimes committed against the liberties of one people with a crime he urges them to commit against the lives of another. Now, that was in there in South Carolina. Why, I mean, people, when I first read that on the radio program, I had people say, Joe, that's just a conspiracy theory. I said, it's so much not a conspiracy theory, it actually appears in the musical version of 1776. Never mind any of the historical records. I read that from the Library of Congress, albeit that's Jefferson's library, but who are we to quibble? So all the things they say about Thomas Jefferson and the foundation of this nation, maybe you can say he wasn't a nimble enough legislator to twist enough arms to get that passage left into the declaration of the king's abuses of his power under Magna Carta. But you can't say that that was written by a racist. He may have been alone in the room of people who actually thought the black population, the enslaved populations of America, were actually worthy of great repute. Why, if you read some of his post-presidential letters as he aged at Monticello, you start to realize he doesn't think very much of the men who are coming around to date his daughters. And at one point says that he finds that the company of the enslaved populations at Monticello was preferable to the company of some of the young men who were courting his daughters. He held them in higher regard. So as we get past, and it was a wonderful time, I want to thank everyone who came out to join us at First Free Coffee Bar in Charlottesville for our celebration of Jefferson's birthday. Sadly, here in the second greatest city in the history of mankind, of course the first being Galilee, we're just basing this on the work product of their native sons. It is important that we remember Jefferson for his realities and not his arguable name-calling that's going on right now. And there's a reason for that, because in order to replace a country, first you have to have the citizens agree to get rid of the existing country. Why, Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence himself says that, history hath shown that, and here I am paraphrasing, that men are less likely to overthrow governments without. This is why, and actually one of the folks who follows me on Facebook saw that we were doing this, and he posted, he said, Joe, Jefferson also said a little revolution every now and then it might be a good thing. And this is why I've become such an ardent supporter of the Convention of States project, conventionofstates.com. The Virginia branch actually sponsored the Thomas Jefferson get-together that we had on Saturday, on the date of his birth. Because George Mason, another Virginian of some repute, wrote into the U.S. Constitution at the very last minute poison pill, if you will, for the authoritarian state that everyone was afraid of. They're like, yeah, I understand we need sort of a standard. If we're going to be a country, we should sort of have a standard government. But they were very concerned with the central government gaining powers. Why one of the usurpations and abuses is he hath created amongst us a myriad of agencies and sent forth officers to eat out our substance. Sounding familiar, doesn't it? Greg writes in, that was a sweet little shindig. The flavor of the cake was magnificent. Okay, Greg, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to chat with you more. I didn't realize you were there at our Jefferson party at First Free Coffee. Thank you for coming in from the land of Gooch. So as they talk about Jefferson and they create this narrative that he was a racist and a slave owner, Madison is facing the same things. It has gotten so bad that the historian that is most well known for writing the histories of the Hemings family, Sally Hemings, and her family members, quit Monticello just late last year over controversy over their wokeness. See, they're driving their own people away because it isn't sufficient just to say, well, you know, Sally Hemings has certainly had children from one of the Jefferson family members. DNA can show that much. And chronicling their lives there, but she wasn't harsh enough. Because they want us to take away not just Jefferson or Madison, but also their work product, which would be the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. And again, it's not because they don't want freedom. They want freedom. They'll tell you, we're here for freedom. We want freedom, Joe. We want freedom from poverty. We want freedom from unhousedness. We want freedom from incarceration. We want freedom from... You see, there's the difference. That's the rub. They want freedom from where the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution are about freedoms for. We got a lot to get into this morning. Arrests over the weekend. There was a January 6th arrest in Waynesboro, and also two notable, and from what I've been able to dig up in rudimentary investigative reporting, family business that was considered one of the preeminent home builders in Central Virginia have been arrested under embezzlement charges, but there's more going on in the story as well, and I think it's a teachable moment, so we'll get into that. Obviously, the latest from the drone bombing that apparently didn't come from Iran. Oh no, that was Hezbollah. They were, no, it's not the Iranians. While the president tells Bibi Netanyahu, why don't you chill out for a little bit, okay? You know, but God bless the Iron Dome. Can we get an Iron Dome here in the United States just in case? Speaking of the Israel battle, the Anti-Defamation League has given the University of Virginia an F on their scorecard of anti-Semitism on college campuses around the country. Speaking of college campuses, the University of Virginia and all colleges, there's a new research paper out that shows just how much subsidy has done to the college tuitions in America. Also, there's a phrase that's kicking around. A lot of the cool kids are using the phrase greed-flation. Greed-flation apparently is the administration's attempt to deflect their policies, specifically their economic policies, when it comes to inflation and why your dollars have become so invaluable. No, it's not that your dollars have been devalued, young man. It is because greedy people, and I think this story of the Dobson Holmes case will feed into that as well. We'll get into that. As a matter of fact, on that subject, Stefan Padfield from the Free Enterprise Project at the National Center for Public Policy Research is going to join us. We're also going to poke around the Buckingham County GOP. They had their Republican committee disbanded by the state committee, and then they reformed it, and then they elected the former chair to come back as chair. We're going to visit with Ramona Christian in a little bit, and Governor Glenn Youngkin of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So far, I have received no comments regarding the Rumble feed not being there, so I appreciate all that. You can call at 434-882-4217. Still have to leave a voicemail, and we'll then get your comment or question in moments, just moments after. Or you can email JT in the morning radio gmail.com, JT in the morning radio at gmail.com, and we'll be right back on Joe Thomas in the Morning.
This is the Racing Wire Minute with Brian Belansky.
A Polish victory lap at Texas. That story next.
The Racing Wire Minute is presented by
She can stand, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can STEM.
Learn more at She Can STEM. A message brought to you by the Ad Council.
NASCAR's most popular driver went to victory lane Sunday at Texas. Chase Elliott led only 39 laps, but he led the one that was most important. It took 2 overtime victories to get the job done, and the win broke a 42-race winless streak. Elliott was driving the Hooters car on Sunday, and after the win, took a reverse victory lap. The Polish victory lap was an homage to AlbCo, who also drove the Hooters car. Brad Keselowski finished second, followed by William Byron, Tyler Reddick, and Daniel Suarez. The win is Elliott's first at Texas and the 19th of his career.
Your money forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube and Rumble. Now coming soon at this Jefferson deal we were at on Saturday. A lot of folks asked, well, when does the radio station go live? This is where we've gone into the hands of the Federal Communications Commission and their extra constitutional court system. Hopefully all is good and they will approve within, I think the window is prescribed to be 45 days in which people can place comments and that kind of thing. And then at the end of that they say, okay, and my wife and I can take over the radio station, and in that time, I guess we're at 35 days now remaining in that 45 days, so we should put a little countdown clock up here. 35 days till radio, but hopefully even before then we might have a home for the radio program back in Charlottesville as well. So as we used to say in the broadcast medium, stay tuned. Rebecca writes in to JT in the morning radio at gmail.com. She on the subject of Jefferson and revolution, she says, "Morning, Joe. Replacement always follows revolution, which is the cultural iceberg we're navigating now. Stay the course and remember the 30% rule." 70% of the colonists did not want to change their cozy lives without freedom. Regarding Monticello, I visited annually for 30 years, and it's apparent they have gone woke. Well concealed to the public, but the tour guides no longer have free rein in their narratives. There's a push to replace Mr. Jefferson's legacy with the current nonsense embedded in practically every local institution in our community. To your first point in there, Becky, this was the point of Patrick Henry's "Give me liberty or give me death" speech, because you're right, it was really not so much 70, it was 30, 30, 40. There were 30% of the colonists who wanted desperately to stay as colonists in England because it was pretty cushy. It was a nice deal. It's good to be with the king. And then there was 40%, the large majority, who just couldn't quite honestly be bothered. They didn't read common sense. They were working all the time, and it was not an easy life, even 100 years into our presence in the New World. It was not an easy go. And so, especially with the French co-opting the Native Americans, the Indian tribes, to assault the colonial borders along the Alleghenies and that border line in between the French territories and the English territories was very much kind of like Gaza and Israel, only without the Iron Dome. They could have used that. So when Patrick Henry addressed the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Virginia, or I guess the House of Burgesses at that time, and he addressed them and said, "Give me liberty or give me death," he was trying to get the General Assembly to hear him. The House of Burgesses were following the 70%, as you mentioned. They were falling prey to this idea that the majority of their constituents opposed freedom and self-governance, when the majority of them either wanted self-governance or just didn't understand, didn't know, were too busy to be involved in this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, we see that continuing today, even with the access to modern technology. And I think some of this is why they have to assail modern technology. Oh, it's Russian disinformation. This is why we need to control what you see in your X feed or your Facebook account, or certainly on your YouTube channel or Rumble. They have to control that. And part of that control comes into convincing you that your own lying eyes are deceiving you. And so I'm going to pick up here on the Dobson Homes story, and it is a concerning story in and amongst the fact that it's a family business that was considered perhaps one of the most successful home building companies in Central Virginia. It was considered just I don't want to say an example too, but it was considered just by the quality of their workmanship and that kind of thing. They were considered to be just some of the best. And so the husband and wife team that ran Dobson Home Building were arrested over the weekend and are facing charges of embezzlement. And I found this to be interesting. I said, well, this is an odd story, because they're pointing to a lot of instances where they just never build homes. And I said, God, how does that happen? How do you get there? So the story is that Tommy Dwayne Dobson and Ann Christine Dobson of Dobson Homes Incorporated are in jail, arrested by Albemarle County Police, facing 6 counts each of felony embezzlement for defrauding customers. All the customers were over the age of 62, And so I went digging in because there was very little from the police department. We've reached out to the police department to say, hey, what else is going on here? And there's a point to this on a grander scale, because you're also hearing the phrase greedflation. That things are more expensive because of greedflation. Because it's not the diluted dollar. It's not the breakneck printing of dollars that have changed things. No, these are greedy oligarchs that are just getting fat and happy on your meager shekels. And that's a lie, because it's the devalued dollar. This is if mainstream social media existed during the Weimar Republic, I'm sure this is what the leaders of the German government would be out there selling it. So no, there's not inflation. I mean, people were going out at lunchtime as the German economy collapsed to buy groceries with their take-home pay, because by the time they got off work at 5 or 6, the dollar, their mark, would have become even less valuable and would buy even less. And we'll get into this with Stefan Padfield. I'm not going to pretend to be an economist. I'm just here watching it. It's like asking Joe Buck how to throw a forward pass. He watches it a lot, commentates on it a lot, but I'm sure he's thrown a football. But I'm, facing, 5 or 6 350-pound behemoths who all can run 4.5 40s, staring him down, it becomes a little harder to throw that football. So I'm not saying, but I'm just bringing up this Dobson story in relation to the greedflation, because in Albemarle County, they'd like to tell you that the reason there isn't affordable housing is because of people like the Dobsons. But when really what began this story is, I've been told, and I went digging around with some people who have some knowledge of the story, and I said, well, so how did this all begin? So apparently it begins in COVID. It begins with the COVID lockdowns. And you may recall at the very beginning of our lockdown nation, just about everything had just continued to be inexpensive. We had a pretty good economy going on right there, and then the COVID lockdowns happened. And one of the first places that the COVID-19 lockdowns and the shutdowns of a lot of manufacturing facilities, because remember, Tony Fauci, I don't know where 6 feet came from. Hey, we're a bunch of guys in the room, and somebody said, "What about 6 feet? That seems all right." And we sneezed, and the spittle, whatever. No, just congressional testimony not a month ago. Tony, take the shot, leave the cannolis. Fauci told Congress, I don't know where 6 feet came from. That 6 feet was used to shut down things like lumber mills. So the cost of lumber skyrocketed very early on in COVID, and so Dobson Homes found themselves facing higher costs. And I'm not making excuses for what they did, but that's where a series of bad choices started getting made, from what I'm told, regarding who gets the money for what. And it's hard. It's hard sometimes for a business to tell their customers, it costs me a whole lot more to make what we make, so you're going to have to pay a whole lot more. And we've seen it post-lockdowns, where the businesses that have come back, $20 hamburgers. Why, we have a story where a McDonald's Happy Meal costs $25. Why? Because during the post-COVID period, many states have mandated nearly doubling their minimum wage. And if you look at the producer price index, you'll see it's been going up faster than the consumer price index. So eventually, businesses have to pass that along to their customers. And that's in where the beginnings of a lot of bad choices. And I'm not saying the Dobsons are innocent in this, but it begins with all of a sudden having their promised construction projects go up by 30-40% in cost. How do you tell that to somebody who's just signed on to have a home built. They say, I was going to do it for $500,000. It's going to be more like $750 because lumber. So they try to get by. They try to scrimp and save and do things on the less expensive. But at the end of the day, they were taking the money and not building the homes. So that's going to be the crux of it all there. But watch for the phrase greedflation coming soon to a news broadcast near you.
Your money forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in and letting us be of service to you this morning on the radio program, come podcast, if you will, as we serve you out through YouTube and now through Rumble. We'll see who's out there watching on Rumble. From what I've seen, and nobody has really commented on the Rumble feed, all of my technology tells me the Rumble feed is going on just fine. At 33 minutes and counting. You can call in at 434-882-4217. Just leave a voicemail, and then we'll play back the voicemail, whatever you say, question or comment on something that we've been talking about. And then we'll if you want to ask a question, I'll do my best to answer, or we'll go find somebody who does. You can also send them to jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com as well. So greedflation. What is greedflation? So greedflation is the premise. Now understand there's several things, some tools that have to go into the establishment of the narrative for greedflation. And greedflation is something that has been put out there quite a bit over the last couple of months now, I guess is the first place. And Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania is one of the big promoters of this. Now, understand, I was in Pennsylvania when Senator Bob Casey was elected into office, and it was the first major office that he was able to ever get elected to. This was the son of a very popular governor in Pennsylvania history, but Bob himself could rarely get elected anything beyond the Pennsylvania House, some local offices. The joke was, if dog catcher was up for grabs, he might have a chance. He was not considered to be a hefty intellectual, but now he's got this problem. It's named John Fetterman, who, despite a massive stroke and apparently a fairly conservative lean when it comes to, defending Israel, Bob Casey has to get his name out there because he's quickly becoming even less relevant as the senator from Pennsylvania. And he's been the chief cook and bottle washer in the greedflation movement. And he says, over the past few years, families across the nation are finding their dollars don't go as far as they used to. And as an American leftist authoritarian, yes, you take a little bit of the truth, you put it into your narrative, and then the crazy stuff starts. So the bat guano starts flying here. Even as inflation has slowed, got to take some credit for the Biden administration, families are still paying higher prices thanks to corporate greed. Under the guise of inflation, corporations are raising prices on American families and raking in record profits to boot. He claims that profits rose by more than 74% during the period from July of 2020 through July of 2022, while inflation was only 14%. Hey, by the way, did your wages go up 14%? Now here's where it comes apart. See, he doesn't show how the index is done, but he's done a special report on greedflation. You can download it if you go to Senate or casey.senate.gov. Not that I'm suggesting. I mean, unless you're really having trouble sleeping at night, this might be better than Xanax for you. But be careful of this, because the tools, Bob Casey isn't doing this in isolation. So before you can do this, you have to have something called ESG. And that's the Campaign for Environmental and Social Governance. This is where the Securities and Exchange Commission tell corporations that sell their stocks on Wall Street, here's what you need to be right with us about. It has nothing to do. And then they tell the investment banks, you need to be right with ESG, or we may come after your licenses. We might start inspecting you. And you say, well, what's ESG? ESG is kind of like cryptocurrency. It's not really anything, but people think it is. It's make-believe in the fact that you can lose money for somebody's retirement fund. Let's say you have a 401k with, I don't know, Ameriprise, Booby Prize. Booby Prize Financial has your 401k, and Booby Prize Financial loses money for you. You give them $100,000 and they say, hey, your retirement fund is now $90,000. What happened to the other $10,000? Well, the things we invested in were green energy programs and some electric car companies, and they lost money. But you have the extra added value of having done something good for the environment. Well, how does that help me? Well, it doesn't really, but watch for them. They could get creative and actually make ESG, like a cryptocurrency. So the monies lost in ESG investing could be recouped in ESG bucks. And if you go to the right government cheese shop, you might be able to get some government cheese for your ESG money, because it's been lost by the investors because they're told to by the SEC. They're told to invest in unprofitable ventures under the banner of ESG. This has also now commonly become known as DEI. So this investment scheme that allows venture capitalists to lose money, going to work in Bob Casey's milieu here a little bit, is the cudgel that they will use to tell these corporations, we now have you. We have you on this greedflation. You had better lower the costs of your iPads and your gasoline and your electric cars, or we're coming after you. And that's the thing that you have to realize, is that this is the, Jerry Brown, Governor Moonbeam of California, once called it the coercive power of government. He did this at a POP or CAP or whatever. It was one of the climate conferences where another treaty was foisted that John Kerry can't get the Senate to vote on because, well, What says the Senate has to vote on treaties that we join into? Well, there's that Constitution, but it was written by racists. Come on, Joe. So that's where we are with this greedflation. See, greedflation is just the follow-up. That's the left hook that followed a couple of kidney shots from the right called ESG. So once a couple of body blows have been landed and your defensive hands start to come down, here comes the bolo. And so this, in the next few months, will be used to lower prices on things in order to help President Biden get reelected. That's all it is. It's a grand sort of student loan debt forgiveness. It's phony baloney. There is no constitutional precedent for it. But in the 100-year establishment of this regulatory capture that we live in, the government now has this cudgel. We heard it. Governor Cuomo, Mario the Younger of New York. I know his name is Andrew, but he's just Cuomo the Second. Just like Trudeau the Second. Oh, don't let me forget the Bill Maher bit on Trudeau the Second was just priceless on Friday. Yes, I was tuning in because of Bill Shatner, but don't judge. And several of you watched it as well, had some great thoughts on it. We'll get into them in a moment. But what's going to happen, just like Cuomo the Younger in New York said to the banks that trafficked in firearms and firearm-associated products, if you, all the way through, if you ran credit cards for people who bought firearms, they were going to come after the bank. So they can't stop them from actually using your credit card for that purchase. No, they don't have that power yet. Wait till the digital currency comes, and then, oh, then we can say, no, you can't spend your money on that. But Cuomo said to the banks of New York, hey, you know what, if you lend money to the people who make firearms, we're going to come and inspect you every week. Well, what company wants a state or federal regulator coming in there and opening up their books and saying, all right, let me see what we got in here, pal. Let's see. Okay, gun rights, gun. So, sorry, props on demand. So this is how the regulatory state does it, is that they create a system. We agree to it. That's the crazy bit, is we agree to it because we think, well, somebody needs to look out for it. And if you go back to one of the earlier programs, I talked about the most frightening phrase that you will ever hear spoken from behind a podium. It is not, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, though that is certainly very frightening. The most frightening phrase you can hear from behind a lectern is, we will make sure that this never happens again. And that's a signal. That's the mating call of the North American authoritarian to tell you, to announce to you that some of your liberty is about to die. Because they will create a government agency that will be under the task of making sure this never happens again. And you say, well, I certainly don't want that bad thing to ever happen again. And it may not. Of course, that's also random happenstance. If something bad happens, the odds of it happening again, in the way the politicians and the lawyers write it up, is almost infinitesimal. But the possibility that these government regulations will steal your liberty is almost a guarantee.
Your Monday forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joining us now, the governor of the state of the union that gave the world the United States, and the best news is they've agreed to not press charges. He is Governor Glenn Youngkin of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Governor, how are you doing this Monday morning?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. And it's a big week. You know, we've presented a common ground budget that really relies on economic growth and job growth to fund all of our main priorities. We don't need to raise taxes. We've got plenty of money in the system. And I'm excited about the discussions we're going to have about delivering for Virginia on time.
Well, your first 2 years as governor should be an example to every government official that you cut taxes and collections at the state level go up, Governor. And that's what I've found so troubling, is that nobody seems to get it. Or is it simply just we don't want the governor to score any points on us?
Well, I first very much agree with your comments around the catalyst that reducing taxes transfers into economic growth. Listen, $5 billion of tax relief in our first 2 years, and record job growth, record economic expansion, and by the way, record receipts into the state coffers. Mm-hmm. And so we can fund this next biennium not out of tax increases, but actually out of job increases. And I think this is our great opportunity. So, you know, I introduced my December budget with $1 billion of tax relief and restructuring to Virginians. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we can continue on this path of providing a catalyst. The General Assembly came back to me with a conference report that had a large tax increase in it, $2.6 billion when all told. And so what I've gone back to them with is, let's find common ground right now, because we need to move forward. I will stop advocating for tax decreases for now. If you all will please stop advocating for tax increases. There's plenty of money in the system, $64 billion to fund our priorities. Let's get this done and let the Virginia economy continue to roar. I mean, we're at record levels on jobs. We're at record levels of receipts. We're at record level of growth. And let's just keep moving and not raise taxes on Virginians, because at a time where inflation's running away from us, Joe, the last thing that Virginians need is a tax increase. Right.
We're already getting taxed by the inflation. So, Governor, you're a business guy. I'm sure in your life, you've run into people who haven't agreed with you on everything, but you've been able to make arrangements and accords. What has to happen for folks in the General Assembly to get to yes on some of these things? As much as we'd like tax cuts, we sure don't want tax increases.
Yeah. I am optimistic that we can find common ground. The General Assembly, of course, is reconvening to take up my amendments and vetoes on bills, plus the budget. And we're going to spend time working together. And I think that's really important. And I hope we can land this. Listen, there is a really good place for us to land, which meets the vast majority of their priorities without tax increases. And I think that's the place that Virginians expect us to land.
So, Governor, we're transitioning. We'll hopefully still be on in Charlottesville, but my wife and I are purchasing some great radio stations in Stanton and Waynesboro, and that valley area between Northrop Grumman, Hershey, two amazing companies. And I won't pick, because it's like trying to pick your favorite kids, but I was talking to a newspaperman. They were talking about having to move people in to take these jobs. I said, well, why can't we do a better job of getting the people who are already in Stanton, Waynesboro, Fishersville, Charlottesville even trained up for these jobs at Amazon and Louisa and places like that. And I know you just signed something to try to help move that forward. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of our great opportunities is to turbocharge our workforce development across the Commonwealth. And last year during the legislative cycle, we passed on a bipartisan basis a number of enabling bills to aggregate the many workforce development programs into a single agency, which we call Virginia Works. And this year we just signed this past week, a great bill that moves it even further, that enables, first of all, the targeting of workforce development programs on the most in-demand jobs. How about that? Let's train people for the jobs that companies want to hire. And second of all, let's expand apprenticeships, particularly for our young people in these areas that really oftentimes are the hardest ones to fill. And those are the ones that don't necessarily need a 4-year college degree, but need advanced credentialing and really great skill sets. And by the way, they pay incredibly well. And so this idea of making it easier to work in the Commonwealth, to have our workforce development focused on the most in-demand jobs, and expanding our apprenticeship opportunities for more industries and earlier in our K through 12 education, hugely important. We got to build this workforce to take these great jobs.
And of course, then they will create the tax revenue that will replace any tax cuts. It always is the same cycle. Governor Youngkin on with us. Last one of the vetoes you did, I thought was very important. Well, there were two that I thought were very important to stop the prescription bureaucracy craziness, because we've seen where direct primary care associations beat that hands down, but also the local sales tax, where local governments wanted to be able to enact a 1% sales tax. That's really a break for Virginians, because I saw a lot of local communities salivating at the idea.
Well, first of all, let me just start on the pharmaceutical prescription side. I firmly believe that drug prices are too high. The best way for us to combat this is first transparency into pricing and discounts. And there are huge discounts that exist within the whole system that nobody sees. And there's questions about whether the consumer are in fact getting the benefit of them. So we were able to pass a bill that will increase transparency. And the second way to combat this is competition. And so we passed a bill that I signed that will study importing drugs from Canada, where the prices are less. And let's create competition so that we can bring drug prices down. The concerns with these pricing boards are heard loudest from concerned parents who have children with rare diseases, and they are absolutely appropriately scared to death that access to these life-saving treatments is going to be denied.
Sure.
And that in fact they'll go to other states. And so we can get at the pharmaceutical price issue through transparency and competition without stifling innovation and access. And then with regards to the local sales tax, listen, I understand that school construction has been really important. And in the last biennium, we put together a package of over $3 billion of loans and grants. And we continue to have a substantial amount of loans and grants in our common ground budget. And indeed, there is a dedicated stream of funding from our casino tax that's just coming online to provide funding for school construction at a time, again, where Virginians are overtaxed. Adding another 1% in the sales tax, where we would have jurisdictions in Virginia with a very high sales tax with no corresponding tax decrease, and no certainty that this increase sales tax is actually going to be additive to education spending as opposed to replacement and moving. I just feel like we can tackle this in different ways and continue to support school construction without adding taxes on Virginians.
Well, good luck with the reconvene session, and hopefully you can find some people who are less in that world of anything the governor wants, they're against. And we'll follow up with you very soon, Governor Youngkin. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Joe, thank you. God bless you. Have a great day.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in, letting us do what we do for you here on this Monday morning. It's tax day. It's the day, the 16th Amendment. Do something 16 times. Do the 16th Amendment thing for yourself, and enjoy the celebration of all that the 16th Amendment brought for us here. And I still believe a violation of our Fifth Amendment rights to private property. Joining us now on our Newsmakers line is Ramona Christian. You see her name there. She is, as this weekend's past vote goes, back in as Buckingham County Republican Party Chair. Ramona, how are you doing this morning?
Doing wonderful. How are you?
Excellent. So, I mean, this has been a tumultuous, 2 weeks for the Buckingham County conservatives, certainly, who have had their Republican Party, the party that I'm sure most of them were members of, disbanded and then reconstituted like so much orange juice. Take us into how that all went down.
Well, how it started was every 2 years, the Republican Party of Virginia requires us to have another election and, as you said, reconstitute our committee.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a time period that has to be done in, and it ends, I think it's between February 1st and April 27th. So every county unit must have their meeting, re-elect a chair, and reconstitute their committee.
Mm-hmm.
As chair, I am required to put out the call, calling for either we may have a mass meeting, a convention, a canvass, a firehouse primary. Your committee picks how you will vote.
Mm-hmm.
So the committee voted to have a convention, a mini convention. And I put out the call on January 30th. And what the RPV plan states is the chair must submit the call to the RPV.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. And that morning I got on a plane and went to Hawaii for a week. And I don't work for the RPV. So it's not my job to run up to Richmond and make sure that they post the call.
So by their rules, you had fulfilled your obligation. You told the RPV, that there was this meeting coming up, and it was on them to put it on their calendar. If I gather what you're telling us, Ramona.
Yes, correct. And I have the emails to prove when it was submitted, because at the same time I submitted it to RPV, I submitted it to my whole entire committee.
Mm-hmm.
So a bunch of people got it. Now, over that week while I was in Hawaii, my committee handled the meetings where you went to turn in your forms to either run for chair,
mm-hmm.
join our committee, or either be a delegate to the 5th District Convention or the state convention. And there were a few mistakes on my call, mm-hmm. as I accidentally sent the draft instead of the revised portion. When I got home and realized, when I landed in Los Angeles, talked to some of my committee and realized it had never been posted. The first thing I do is email the RPV's Chief Legal Counsel, Chris Marston, and Executive Director, Ken Nunnenkamp,
mm-hmm.
and said, hey guys, this did not get posted. What do I do?
Okay.
And that switches what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I received an email back from the lead counsel of the entire Republican Party of Virginia stating, Ramona, your sign-up dates are already through. So the only thing you have to do now is there is a process outlined in our party plan that if anyone has a problem with a meeting, a call, anything like that is
mm-hmm.
going on with our party, there is a section titled appeals, which most people would legally think if you don't like what happened, you appeal it.
Right.
So the appeals,
intuitive.
Doesn't it? It does seems very simple. So he said, Ramona, someone from Buckingham County has to file a written appeal. It must be a verified Republican voter. It must be accompanied by 25 signatures of verified Republican voters from Buckingham County, and it must be received within 30 days. If it is not, everything's good. You've had your election. You go on with life.
You fulfilled. Hang on to that 1 second, Ramona, here as we have crested into the 7 o'clock hour.
Your money forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube and Rumble. I've gotten some emails saying the Rumble feed is working great. I did a quick attempt during a commercial break to log in, and apparently I'm okay to create content, but I'm not okay to see it yet. So I guess my Rumble account isn't as thorough as I thought. So I can't get it because I guess you have to be a Rumble member to get the content of Rumble. But YouTube is up working, and that is going well. We are visiting with Ramona Christian. She is now again the chair of the newly reconstituted Buckingham Republican Party. Ramona, so what happened this weekend? So there was a vote. Now this newly created committee now has to have officers, I guess, right?
Yes, we will have a meeting here within probably 10 to 14 days and re-elect our officers, reconstitute the committee. And the way we'll do that is by the bylaws that we already have we've had for 15 years.
So what was the vote? What was the vote on Saturday that you won? I think it was 87 to 81.
It was 87 to 81. We also had 13 Democrats that voted in that election, as they had to sign renunciation forms that they had voted in a Democratic presidential primary.
Interesting.
And that is interesting, isn't it? I am sure I did not receive those votes.
Well, one never knows. There, Ramona. But this elected you back as chair of this new committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, congratulations on that, by the way, and just
thank you. Thank you.
And for anyone who's not in Buckingham County or sits there and says, what's the matter with, because I hear this all the time, Ramona, and I'm sure you do as well, that, people just get frustrated with the one place in the world that they can find conservative voices, which is generally the Republican Party, that sometimes they want to take the hands off, or they don't want to ruffle feathers or things like that. You, on the other hand, have ruffled many feathers to the point where even the Democratic Party of Buckingham County has taken to NBC television, the network itself, to go on a campaign to try to make you guys look bad. So bless you for being that kind of committee chair that's, about doing things, not just sitting around and kind of navel gazing there. So what's next?
Well, thank you. So what's next is I'm hoping now that our county can heal. I am very grateful to my committee and to my friends. They were out knocking doors and making phone calls for me, because what was on the ballot was much more than me. What was on the ballot also was John McGuire, Trump, election integrity in our county. My committee in the past 2 years, we got 3 brand new Republican school board members elected. We found issues with our elections and ensured election integrity. One of the issues with our elections actually happened to help one of our candidates, which this had never been brought up. The previous office had allowed my Republican school board candidate to run without getting the proper signatures. He was, and I'm sorry,
no.
The paper was sent into the state, and he was certified to run, And we were told we didn't have to get signatures because he was endorsed by the party. But evidently, our new registrar pointed out to us this year that even though school board members are endorsed by a party, they still have to get signatures. It's only Board of Supervisors and up that are nominated and therefore do not have to get their signatures.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why I had so many write-in candidates for school board, because the previous administration in the elections office had allowed the school board members to run without signatures. So we were scrambling when we found out, oh, that's not what the law says.
Yeah.
And my guys were out and only had 3 days to get their signatures, and some of them didn't get them in time, so we were writing candidates.
But you
we're
won.
hoping.
You won
But
a
we
bunch
won.
of them. Yeah.
They're great people. They're wonderful people, and they have worked hard to help their community, and they have endured attacks that were not warranted. And they were even vindicated with a 6-page opinion from the Attorney General of Virginia stating the laws that were not followed in Buckingham County correctly concerning elections. And that doesn't seem to matter to some people, but we are hoping we can put that behind us and we can carry on. We are hoping that my committee's individual support of John McGuire and President Trump will not be held against them anymore. I have received such criticism from the 5th District personally for my personal friendship with John McGuire. And of course, I am on the Trump campaign. I'm on the Trump leadership team. I'm also a presidential delegate. I will be going to Wisconsin to represent the president. We have our first meeting this Wednesday, and it has been a hard road to stand up for what you think is right in this country.
Well, and let me ask you about that. Ramona Christian is on with us now, re-elected as chair of the Buckingham GOP. And Tambra, by the way, commented on the YouTube feed. She said, congratulations, Ramona.
Thank you.
That a lot of people, and this is sort of, I guess, the whack-a-mole that they do, is you have come out and endorsed one of the candidates in Virginia's 5th Congressional District primary, which voting begins May 4th. So we're only, a couple of weeks away from the beginning of our crazy early voting season anyway, Ramona. But that being said, once all the dust settles, and the story you tell is exactly what my friend Clark calls law farce. We call it law fair, but he says, no, you're missing the C for communist. It's law farce. They take the law, and in some cases they actually write the laws that they can then weaponize. It's like they sit there and say, well, we're going to need this at some point. Let's wheel it out here and try to make a mess of things for people. And I think your survival in this is very very important in this, as is the committee. And so talk about the membership of the committee. Is it still vibrant? Because my concern is this primary in Virginia's 5th Congressional District may lead to the Democrat getting elected.
The membership in my committee is very strong, and it ranges. We have several members that have been Buckingham County Republicans for 30 and 40 years. I have a former 5th District chair. I have 2 or 3 former county chairs. And the funny thing about this, Joe, is they all went through the same thing with attacks from Bob Good's campaign managers, the Shores, and Rick Boyer. And our committee, this is the 4th time that those individuals have had a hand in trying to destroy our committee. And this time they just stood up and said, we've had enough. We've had enough of other counties and other people meddling in Buckingham, and we want it over with. Stay out of our county. And unfortunately, they used the people that were still upset from the legal issues counting the election to bring back up all those hard feelings and feelings of vengeance. And I hope now that we can all put it behind us and work to improve our county and save our country. We have to get Trump elected. Yes, I personally am behind John McGuire. I tried my best as chair to stay neutral, This is my personal opinion, but when I had a phone call with Congressman Bob Good, and he told me that if I supported John McGuire, I could not be a fellow sister in Christ. That was the deciding factor for me.
Well, I appreciate it, Ramona. We're going to run here in a couple of moments in here.
Okay.
I know that it's been a hard road, but you have survived it, and what do they say? God doesn't put anything on our plate He doesn't think we can chew up and swallow, or words to that effect. But thank you.
Amen. Yes.
So thank you so much for what comes, and are all the websites and the places for people to go and find out what's going on they're also available?
We do not have a website anymore. We do have a Facebook page. I didn't used to run that. I had a friend that ran it and moved to Maine. So I'm going to find someone this upcoming meeting that will run the website and put everything out there.
Okay.
And everyone that's a Republican is welcome to join. I want to thank my committee, my friends, the McGuire team. They are amazing. And I invite the people that voted against me to come to our meetings, get to know us, and hopefully we can put it all behind us and work together for the better of Buckingham and our country. We need to come together and elect the best candidates, and especially President Trump.
Will Payne writes into the YouTube channel, he said, put out there the Buckingham School Board has been FOIA'd for details regarding the Board of Directors, BPA's Board of Directors, having Superintendent Keeler, Dr. Keeler apparently has been a salaried member of the BPA there. So these are the school board members that you were talking about. These are the folks who are out there trying to, get this information, get this reorganized correctly. So to your credit again, Ramona, thank you so much, and you have a great morning.
You too. Thank you.
Your money forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you, and thank you for joining in at 434-882-4217. Though it is time for us to go to Mac McDonald's notebook, where he is standing by for us. Good morning, Mac. How are you doing this Monday morning? Where's your green jacket? Don't you have a commemorative green jacket?
My green jacket is pullover 3/4 zip. It's nothing with the Masters patch on it for sure. I watched, because I was coming back from the Virginia Tech spring weekend. We'll have more on that this week. Spent a lot of time with Bud Foster. We talked to a lot of wonderful people. A great interview with Michael Vick. Just a lot of stuff going on. So I watched it from the airport yesterday in Concord, the Concord Hair Care and Tire Center airport was, but I got back in great time, and it was, I got to see the finish. But 27-year-old Scotty Scheffler now has a couple of green jackets. Now, he admitted he had to stay aggressive. His 4 under 68 proved the 80-week #1 ranking is no fluke. He finished the 88th Masters at 11 under, and his wife is just a couple of days from delivering the couple's first child. And Scotty said if she goes into labor, he goes, I'm gone. And he became the 4th youngest golfer to win multiple green jackets. His Sunday morning, when your tee time is at 2:35, you're hanging around, you're eating breakfast, you're pacing, whatever he said. But he had a few buddies to help him get through the morning instead of his wife, who was home in Texas.
Instead of just me and Mary at the house, I had a couple of my buddies with me, and we sat and relaxed. Tried not to think about golf, but it was increasingly difficult. They were great support for me this morning, and it was a long morning, but it was well worth it. I'm glad to be sitting here now.
Yeah, you don't want a bunch of guys sitting around going, Scotty, you're the greatest, you're the best. Just shut up, okay? How are you going to play 11? What are you going to do on 12?
Nice.
Anyway, Colin Morikawa had a 74. DeChambeau shot 73. Ludwig Oberg finished with a 69, 4 clear of Scheffler. Max Homa's chase ended with a double at the par 3 12th. He was my inspirational pick. He shot 73. Now, Tiger finished 82-77 on the weekend. He placed dead last. The guys close to Scotty at the beginning of the day were trying to solve the firm greens and the Georgia winds. Sheff birdied 13 and 14. He told the scribes he did not get attached to the lead. The Texan birdied 16 for good measure, and then sat in the press tent and said, you know what, guys, I don't want to talk golf. I just want to be home.
I feel like playing professional golf is an endlessly not satisfying career. All I can think about right now is getting home. I'm not thinking about the tournament. I'm not thinking about the green jacket. I'm trying to answer your questions. I'm trying to get home. At the end of the day, I think that's what the human heart does. You always want more, and I think you got to fight those things and focus on what's good. Winning this golf tournament does not change my identity. My identity is secure, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Love it. Anyway, Neil Shipley, the James Madison grad in the amateur from Ohio State, who looks like the second coming of Craig Stadler, had 73 on Sunday. He finished tied for 53rd, 7 places ahead of Tiger.
who finished dead last.
Well,
in
but
the
he got a nice, didn't he get a nice standing ovation when he came to the first tee
Yeah, of
on
course.
Sunday in his
Yeah,
red?
those are the patrons. It's not, you're not in Arizona playing the Waste Management. I promise you, you're not in Phoenix. So with all that being said, Virginia got 2 of 3 over the weekend. The lacrosse team got beat by Duke. Virginia just can't beat Duke on the road. The women's softball team got a nice series win against NC State as well. The NBA playoffs are set. The Celtics are the top seed in the East. Oklahoma City is the number 1 seed in the West. So those are your headlines. And if Caitlin Clark, it's draft night tonight for the WNBA. And if you haven't seen it, go to awfulannouncing.com. Caitlin made an appearance on Saturday Night Live. And she was during the weekend update and was not the best, but got more comfortable. She's trying to handle a prompter and the jokes they wrote for her and everything. But anyway, she will she will honor the WNBA tonight, I'm sure, with the Indiana Fever.
Oh, so you're saying she's no round mound of rebound. She's not going to replace Charles Barkley.
Yeah, she's not Charles Barkley yet. That's for sure.
Okay.
But anyway, it was. I watched a little bit of it this morning. I didn't see it live. So, but yeah, I got back. So anyway, yeah, it was a busy weekend. We're glad to have my feet on the ground. Got a busy day today, and I know you do too. So
I know some of my friends.
Onward and upward, right?
You know, the SOCMED accounts, not Ahmed. That's different. He's the puppet with Jeff Dunham. But the SOCMED accounts were all full of pictures. Apparently, somebody created a graphic, either with UVA sports media properties help or not. And the graphic is showing the difference between the national title UVA baseball team in 2015 and this year's team in terms of, I mean, I think they have like 100 points on the national championship team in batting average. They've already scored almost as many runs as the national championship team.
Yeah, this team's ridiculous. 47 runs over the weekend.
Well, you got to have that if you're playing the Southeast Conference. You know, the SEC, I swear to goodness, their baseball teams are populated with people who are just a little too small to play linebacker for some of their football teams. Holy moly, you know. I mean, it's just like, and I think Alabama, their center on their basketball team tried out for the football team. He was 3 people wide as well. They grow them big. They do grow them big there because they'll come up against Georgia in some regional, and these guys will be busting out of their uniforms. Never mind the issue with the Nike baseball uniforms in the major leagues, but these guys.
Did you see the Dodger fan make the switch on a home run ball that he caught?
No. What did he do?
This is one of the funniest videos ever. This big Dodger fan, he's just this side at 240, Dodger jacket. He had a fake, not a fake, but he had a old baseball in his pocket. And Machado of the Padres hits a home run. And, the tradition is, okay, I'm going to throw the ball back. So he makes the catch and then turns and pulls the old baseball out of his jacket and throws the baseball out onto the field.
Nice.
Now the section, everybody's giving him a cheer and whatever. ESPN sends Buster Olney to interview the guy.
Really?
On camera. You could see the switch as plain as day. So the guy admits it. He goes, yeah, I just took a chance. I was going to catch a home run ball, so I brought another one. I wanted to keep the real home run ball. So he threw a fake baseball. Not a fake, but it wasn't the real. He threw it, so the fans, way to go. But he kept the Machado home run. It's baseball fans are baseball fans, so it's awesome.
All those years, I used to bring my mitt to all the ball games.
Oh, of course,
and
yes, of course.
Never a ball, never close to me, ever once.
That.
And my friend of mine's caught 2. I'm like, all right, now you're just being greedy. It's just like everything else.
Yeah. About 30,000 or so at the Virginia Tech spring game. And it was real windy, cold. I've never been to Blacksburg where it's been above 50 ever. And I was telling
that's
Bud,
August in Blacksburg.
I stole what was it? Mark Twain, who said the coldest winter he ever spent was the summer he spent in, wherever. So I told him, I used that quote, but it was just a really good weekend. Now Virginia has their spring game coming up this Saturday And so all these
Lot of
college
eyes.
teams are getting their spring
Well,
game.
everything I read said these running backs, especially second and third on the depth charts, were really lighting it up. I mean, just
Yeah, oh yeah,
showing
yeah.
speed, which is not something you expect. Oh, and speaking of, I saw some pictures.
Mhm.
So I guess this week's Foster and Friends is going to be
Yeah,
Michael Vick.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're gonna talk some NIL, but Michael Vick was available. We had a great visit. He's very good friends with Matt Schaub. He and because Schaub spent a lot of time under Michael Vick, and then
Oh, in
they
Atlanta, right?
created a very strong relationship. So Bud brought him over, and we had a little place set up, and yeah, a lot of people were taking pictures. But Bud brought him over, and I said, Michael, it's great to talk to you, and I said, you and I have mutual friends. He said, "Who's that?" I said, "Matt Schaub," and he said, "Wow." He goes, "Yeah, Matty, good friend." He was very, he praised the fact that he loved Matt Schaub. But yeah,
Oh,
that's
that's
going to be
great.
on this week. We're going to wrap up the weekend, so yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, maybe we should share that. Maybe somebody asked me if there was going to be programming on my YouTube channel beyond just me. I said, isn't that enough? It's never enough, and so
No,
they,
I get you.
uh,
But we could do that. I could do something. I could produce something for you. Something.
all right, well, who knows? But it looked like it was a nice chat. Was Coach Foster actually just like kneeling on the ground to do the interview?
Well, somebody was supposed to bring him a chair. Michael was in a hurry, so he wasn't praying at the feet of Michael Vick. It looks like that in the picture, but no. And then finally, we got a chair over there because things kind of happened like boom, boom. I was set, ready to go. Bud was, coming last second and wanted to be a part of the interview. Yeah, so it just looks that way. Like, Michael, thank you for building.
Oh my
Thank you for
gosh,
coming in '99. Thank you for being a red shirt. Yeah, no,
right?
it was
No, so,
it was good. But boy, the fans there and Bud introduced me almost all day. Is Mac used to work in Virginia, so I had a pair of those glasses with the funny mustache and the nose. Yeah, so I had
nice.
these. And so anytime Bud introduced me, and they go, "You were at Virginia?" And I
Oh
went,
my goodness! Oh,
"Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just
I was at Virginia for a little while."
yeah. I'm somewhat involved with the UVA football program at Bass. All right,
I
good
did.
stuff, Mac.
I took those just for that reason.
Nice,
So it was
good
pretty
stuff.
fun. But
You
it
got to
was
be
good.
incognito. You gotta,
Yeah.
this is, what is it? What's his name from the Gong Show? Taught us how to be
Yes.
incognito, right? But anyway, I appreciate it, sir. You have a
All
great
right,
morning.
partner.
Good stuff, and we'll talk to you again in the morning.
Yeah, we'll see you in the morning.
Your Monday forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you here at 434-882-4217, or you can email JT in the morning at gmail.com, JT in the morning radio at gmail.com, because for some strange reason there were 70 other people who already had the Gmail address JT in the morning. Who are you and what are you doing with my name? Joining us now, because we were talking earlier about this crazy idea of what they're calling Bob Casey in Pennsylvania carrying the bucket of greedflation. And I saw this story last week, and it really struck me as a story that really stunned me in the brazenness by which they're blaming this on corporate greed. Stefan Padfield is on with us from the Free Enterprise Project. Stefan, thank you for taking a little time out with us. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. So first and foremost, the story I sent to you guys was this $25 Happy Meal in a McDonald's in California that somebody tweeted out. But I think that this story also feeds into this narrative of this greedflation that they're claiming is now running rampant, and that inflation isn't the dilution of the monetary's fault. It is now somehow the fault of the greedy oligarchs that run these companies. First off, unpack the all too real influences that create a $25 Happy Meal at a place like McDonald's, but also try to help us unwind this narrative that I worry is going to grip us through the election of greedflation.
Well, I think a lot of it just boils down to that the left, whether through cynicism or just lying or just ignorance, doesn't understand basic economics and free market competition. And they really do have seemingly this utopian view that money just grows on trees, and the only issue is how you redistribute it. And if their plans don't work out the way that they want in terms of, hey, we're going to spend all this money, we're going to keep passing these billion-dollar bills, but somehow prices should stay just as they are. And if prices go up, then we're just going to blame the greedy capitalists. I mean, the whole thing just falls apart with just a basic sort of econ 101 analysis in terms of the money supply, in terms of other issues like supply chain issues that are still a very real thing. But I think it's also worth noting that you certainly have apparently a lot of ignorance, right, in terms of these politicians, and a lot of just cynicism. But there is also always, it's always worthwhile to ask, what if the actual outcome is in fact the intended outcome, right?
Yeah.
So if the $25 Happy Meal is in fact precisely what they want because they want chaos, or if, I think we might talk about the minimum wage a bit later and how it leads to actual more unemployment, particularly in the communities that they claim to want to help, that actually leaves more people on the government dole, and that's what they want. And again, this idea of just undermining society because they have this idea that this utopia is going to somehow spring from the chaos. And so there's multiple things going on. There's the ignorance, and I typically break this down when people scratch their heads about what the left is doing. You have to think in terms of true believers, useful idiots, opportunists, and cowards. And it's the confluence of all of them that lead us to the insane places that they take us.
Well, and we were just celebrating Thomas Jefferson's birthday, and he was in France as the French Revolution started to grip, and Robespierre tried to use this very kind of scenario where he went and gathered the impoverished, the poorest of the poor, realizing there was enough of them to overthrow the king and make him king. This is not the first time we've seen this paradigm. Is there a narrative that we should be, Stefan, using to blunt the power of this going towards November?
Well, I think one thing is you're seeing some great work being done in the space of just exposing the underlying radicalism of a lot of this. So a book just came out by the title of Next Gen Marxism. You've got Chris Rufo's book. There's a line of books sort of going back the last couple of years that really break down what's underlying of this radicalism. And I think that's a very important narrative, right? And we see this in all sorts of places with the distortion of language. So, we have things like gender affirming care, social justice, Black Black Lives Matter, all these phrases and terms that sound great. Nobody would disagree with them on their face, but it's when you lift up the hood and look what's actually going on underneath that you see the radicalism. So certainly part of it is exposing that very sort of thread that goes back, as you say, to the French Revolution and maybe even earlier than that. And then the other is just basic economics, right? I mean, pointing out that I remember in my own experience, I was buying this narrative about the gender wage cap, and then somebody pointed out to me, said, look, if it's really a free market economy, the gender wage gap doesn't exist, because if there are women being underpaid, somebody's going to come into the market and pay them more, because that's an arbitrage opportunity. And then when I started digging beyond just the mainstream media, literally every economic study that actually takes things into account, like how many hours you're willing to work, how much experience you have, and so forth, there's either absolutely no gender wage gap or it's at most 4 cents, whereas the left keeps telling us it's something like, I don't know, 40 cents. Mm-hmm. So they're just lies. And so the basic economics of free market competition, that it's not just simply, hey, the CEO is making $40 million a year, so he can just give that to his employees. That'll work 1 quarter, and then the business is going to get undermined because nobody will want to be the CEO, and the company will tank, and then you'll have no jobs, right? So it's both the underlying radical narrative, and then it's just the basic economics.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think is, what do they say? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics, and they get very good at pulling some random number and say, look, this is. But one of those statistical analyses that I thought debunks this whole idea of greedflation is we hear all the time in the press, Stefan, about the consumer price index, and everyone loves to flog away at the consumer price index. But one of the ones that I look at is the producer price index, which month after month, as they release these numbers, is going up more than the consumer price index, which I think indicates that the people who make the things that we consume are taking it in the wallet a lot harder than we are.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And again, it's one of those sort of, you see these politicians on the left sort of standing around and hand waving and don't look over here, just look over here at this one graph that I have. The other place that I've seen this very recently is, for a while we've heard this narrative and people just would say flat out that the business case for diversity has been proven. And they would just trot that out as if it's a done deal. And they would cite 4 McKinsey studies, speaking of lies, damn lies, and statistics. And those have now been thoroughly debunked, right? Which really should surprise no one. You can either hire on the basis of merit, or you can hire on the basis of something else. And if you hire on the basis of something else, then you're going to undermine performance, right? And so it's not that shocking that these studies that said, oh yeah, if you just forcibly move the chess pieces of your demographics around, with the sort of central planning hand, everything will be fine, right? It's the same story with the economy. We're going to pump all this money in, we're going to have these crises that we're facing in terms of the supply chain issues, and it's showing up in the data, but don't look at the data that points out that the companies are just responding to market forces, and they're doing the best they can. They don't want to drive away customers, by putting less products in their offerings, right? They want to make you come to their store and buy their products.
How similar, Stefan, is this to what happened in Venezuela when Hugo Chavez instituted wage increases, mandatory wage increases, and then when the cost of everything went up to match the mandatory wage increases, he came in with price controls, and a lot of businesses shut down. You wound up with those food riots. Is there some correlation to what happened there?
I think certainly there is, and it's frightening how fast this can happen. I mean, we have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about our economic health, but if you just keep doubling down, I mean, this is another thing that we see from the left, is when their plans don't work, they don't step back and say, hey, maybe we're just pumping too much money in the economy, maybe the minimum wage doesn't work. They just double down, right? Just as you said, oh, the wages don't work, so we'll do price controls. And the system, this is another thing, I can go on and on about sort of the delusions of the left, but this idea that the money is just going to be there magically growing on trees, right? It is ultimately a fragile system at the end of the day. Yes, we have a lot of resources and a lot of reasons for optimism, but if you just keep hammering on incentives and keep going against basic market economics, eventually it just falls apart. It is not just natural law that you're going to just have this wonderful capitalist economy that we've had for years. So yes, it is very scary, and there is a correlation for sure.
Well, how much of that is tied to the fact that they can actually just print more dollars? We watched it during COVID, and just to pay everyone to stay home, they were just printing money, almost as if they said, all that stuff they warned you about when we released the gold standard has come to fruition, and the phrase "the full faith and credit of the U.S. government" has almost become a punchline, Stefan.
Yeah, and I think it's partly just basic human nature, right? When you have the ability to, sort of do good works, quote unquote, everybody wants to kick the can down the road. Nobody wants to say enough is enough. We need to start balancing the budget. And so the temptation is so great that issue goes across party lines, right? It seems like no politician, or certainly not enough politicians, are willing to just say, look, I know you want X, Y, Z, but we just can't give you everything. I mean, even the modern monetary policy economics that suggests that under certain conditions you can print money relatively freely, the politicians that tout that all forget the under certain conditions, right? They just go right with you can print, and they're just, oh, we found our economists, let's just print. And it's just not honest, and it's very troubling. But it just seems like nobody has the willpower to say, okay, we're going to stop doing this, and we're going to stop doing it here, unfortunately, until the people just say enough is enough, I assume.
Well, and is this going to have an impact on the presidential race? Because it seems like President Biden is banging this drum, but it seems like Robert F. Kennedy is not. And so that's 2 out of the 3, at least media-covered presidential candidates that are saying this is not what you think it is. I don't think they could have picked a worse senator to be the standard bearer for greedflation than Bob Casey, because maybe they need to pump him up because Fetterman is seeming less and less like a left-wing Democrat than he was when he got elected in there. But how much of an impact, Stefan? Not asking you to endorse or anything. I know Free Enterprise Project is a nonprofit, and you're not weighing in, but especially in the congressional races, when we see the House Freedom Caucus get attacked for trying to rein in spending and things like that, what kind of impact on these congressional races are we going to see?
So I still have a lot of faith in the common sense of the common man, and the people in their homes, on their shopping trips, know what's going on. And you can pump out all the messaging you want, and people are just shrugging it off and saying, you're lying. I just went to the grocery store. I just went to the gas pump. I know what's going on. I just tried to get a mortgage. I mean, on and on and on. It's, this is sort of, again, these narratives that bump up against reality. Eventually, reality always wins, right? When you're pushing lies. Yeah, go ahead.
But doesn't that, though, feed into the greedflation? Because if certainly now the left has acknowledged the fact that the grocery store and the gas pump are working against them. So let's create, and how does ESG play into this? Because I feel like now that the cudgel of ESG is safely in the hands of the government regulators, they can say to ExxonMobil, lower the gas prices, or ... implication regarding some SEC-driven ESG campaign against them. As you said, we see it at the grocery store checkout, but they can turn around and say, yeah, that's the Wegman family. They're just greedy. That's why your groceries cost so much.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and certainly that's a good response from the side of folks pushing that narrative. But again, if we have enough people who actually are business people, right, who can stand up and talk to their employees and talk to the general public about what's going on, and I think the reality of people's personal experience still ultimately resonates with, look, we're trying our best, and we are subject to these forces that have been created outside of our control, and we're just responding in the best way we can. I think that story still sells. I will say on the ESG front, fortunately, there's been a bit of pushback that has been meaningful. There's still a long way to go, but I believe that the use of these forces just overtly and brazenly has had to take a step back. So hopefully there's less of this pressure, and the companies have recognized that they actually can win, right? And successfully just say no, and we're not going to just do this because you've slapped the label ESG, environmental, social governance factors on it, and so somehow we're just going to have this complete radical radical leftist platform and it's supposedly pro-business, right? Because you put these letters on it. I think more and more people are recognizing that's not going to work. Right, it's not going to work with the public, and even the C-suites, even if they might be aligned personally, are starting to realize they've got to back off a little bit. So hopefully that pressure lessens, and we can continue to raise the awareness of people as to the problems around that whole narrative as well.
Well, you guys at the Free Enterprise Project spend so much time getting on these boards. Is a transparency movement amongst these companies perhaps a happy outcome of some of this? Is in their defense, they'll start saying, hey, here's what's going on, because I know that you guys try to get into these boards meetings, these quarterly reports and things like that, to make sure this stuff isn't going on. Talk about that a little bit, Stefan, and because sometimes we're not saying that everyone is great shakes when it comes to how they govern their companies.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we spend, again, you mentioned I'm at the Free Enterprise Project as part of the National Center for Public Policy Research. And at the Free Enterprise Project, we basically spend every day doing some form of activism in the name of proper corporate governance, getting back to neutral, free market capitalism. And so we engage through shareholder proposals, through direct conversations, through exposure, and we've been chipping away at this for a number of years now, and the progress sometimes seems slow, but there is progress, and we do take a lot of pride in the fact that the needle has moved, the agenda has been exposed, but there's still a lot of work to do. So again, we've got a slew of proposals that we're now getting into shareholder meeting season. So we'll be at these meetings and we'll be telling our story. And there's a lot of forces against us, right? I mean, basically the big three asset managers, the big two proxy advisors, the SEC. So sometimes it seems like it's a completely unwinnable uphill progress or challenge. But when we take a big step back and look at how this has changed over the course of the last 3 years or so, we really do see a change. And so even though sometimes the discrete battles can be a little frustrating, the work that we're doing and aligned parties are doing, I think ultimately we can really look at what's going on and see an effect, and we'll continue to do that.
It's nationalcenter.org. Stefan, thank you so much for taking a little time out with us this morning and debunking, laying the bunk to all this that's going on. You have a great morning, sir.
Thanks so much for having me. You as well.
Your Monday forecast is calling for a very nice one. Afternoon highs in the lower 80s with mostly sunny skies. Can't rule out a hit or miss shower storm late day, but most folks see nothing. On Monday night, mostly clear, lows in the mid 50s. Tuesday, a hit or miss shower storm late in the day, otherwise mostly sunny and 76. By Wednesday, a chance of showers mainly in the afternoon, otherwise mostly cloudy, highs in the upper 70s. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you here on our YouTube channel and now our Rumble channel. And I've got the permission to make the video. I tried to go watch the video just during a commercial break and I couldn't, but several of you have texted and email said things are going great on Rumble. A couple of things, random access memory that I wanted to get into this morning. I was watching, and please don't judge me harshly, but I was watching Bill Maher because of William Shatner was going to be on it, and his rant, it just was priceless. Do we have the clip of Bill Maher from this weekend?
that of the 15 North American cities with the worst air pollution, 14 are in Canada. I'm not citing these stats because I have it out for Canada. I love Canada and its people and always have. But I hate zombie lies. Zombie lies. That's when things change, but what people say about them doesn't. Yes, for decades, places like Vancouver and Amsterdam and Stockholm seemed idyllic because everything was free and all the energy we needed was produced by riding a bike to your job at the windmill. Canada was where all the treasured goals of liberalism worked perfectly. It was like NPR come to life. But with poutine. Canada was the Statue of Liberty with a low-maintenance haircut and cross-country skis, a giant idealized blue state with single-payer health care, gun control, and abortion on polite demand. Canada was where every woke white college kid wearing pajama pants outdoors who'd had it up to here with America's racist patriarchy dreamt of living someday. I mean, besides Gaza.
And I just, he just has gotten to the point where I just don't think he cares any more. He just, he realizes and bless him for finding the humor in it. Because for so very long, you and me, we were the only ones who could, find the humor in some of the things that these people were doing. We would make fun of it, and then it would be, oh, that's just right-wing conservatism and those things. But some of the stuff they stand for. I mean, it's his point about all the polluted cities in Canada. This is what happens when people behind lecterns tell you, we're going to fix this so it never happens again. We've had some folks calling in during the course of the morning, so let me see if I can get some of them out here for us. Here's this one that came in, and we'll open it up here, and there we go. Yeah, that's the one I want to use. Let me see what we've got on the email that we just got in here. Oh, there it is. Why is it not? It doesn't want to let me play the email that we just received. So it's, I apologize for that. Let me see if I can just download the thing and then play it ourselves here. Let me see if I've got this going here.
Hey, Joe, on the greedflation, granted, the greed of power-hungry politicians is largely responsible for the inflation we're looking at. That's true. Their willingness to devalue what we have accrued so they can buy votes when they printed the money is responsible for a lot of it. But a lot of it is the green policy. So if we're going to use a term for this, let's make it greenflation and put a little bit finer point on it. You know, when you raise the cost of fuel, you raise the cost of pretty much everything. When you raise the cost of farm diesel and you make it very difficult to get fertilizer, you raise the cost of our food. So greenflation sounds a lot better to me than greedflation.
All right. Well, that's and that's, to me, that's an interesting way to look at it. Let's throw in there also, when you reduce the supply of natural gas, that increases the cost of fertilizer, which then increases the cost of making the food that you would then have to put or cultivate with your diesel-powered tractor. And then you have to then put it into a diesel-powered truck to drive it to the grocery stores, who are being powered mostly by electricity generated in natural gas, for the most part, power plants. So you can see why everything has gone up in price, but that's why they need to create this false boogeyman of greedflation. I think you're right, Dr. Clark. Greenflation is more accurate of a term, but I also don't want to accept their premise about it even being a thing. It's a Dodge. It's the same Dodge that I saw. And here's a letter to our friends at the Augusta Free Press. We have a moment before we finish. This is a letter to Congressman Ben Klein. Republicans are responsible for the poor state of health care in this country. I want to tell you that I have a friend who is number 27 in line at the RAM clinic in Fishersville this morning. It's 4:12 a.m. on Saturday morning, and she is 70 years old. She headed out at about 5 minutes after midnight to get in line and wait in her car. And she goes on to say how nurses from what President Trump used to refer to as beep, whole countries. I know I can say it because we're streaming, but I don't want to lose the ability to censor myself, because very soon we will be back on the radio when we get the license approval for WTON. Oh, my God. Email says, Joe, be careful. You keep talking about this web page of yours, and these insistences on continue to do your program might just inflame people to protest your purchase of WTON radio. Then don't tell anyone while we're here on Rumble or not. But she goes on in the letter to claim that Republicans are the cause of the sad state of health care in America. And I would point out, A, that's wrong, because, well, Obama in Obamacare, not a Republican. But the sad point is what she's doing is exactly the virtue signaling that we see so frequently from behind lecterns and podiums to make a case, to say, I know someone who has. Of course, there are instances where people don't get great health care. I think last week we were talking with the folks with direct primary care, and somebody said, well, there's no guarantee that you're going to get good care if you go to a direct primary care association. Well, there's no guarantee about anything. And that's where the American authoritarians come in to win. They come in to win under the idea that they can guarantee something. Think about Lyndon Johnson's speech about the Great Society. He will create a society of abundance and liberty for all. Abundance for all? How are you going to pull that one off, Lyndon? And now we have 4 times as many poor people as we did at the beginning of the Great Society 60 years ago. Anyway, it's time for us to wrap it up here. Thank you for watching. I'm glad the Rumble feed worked. I'm glad the YouTube continued to work. Until tomorrow morning at 6, so long, and thanks for all the fish.